All right, so I have a few things adjacent to Baldur's Gate 3 I want to talk about that are more D&D related. Let's zoom in. First of all, I enjoy filling bars and having things just sort of ticking along in the background. So I have idle champions, and then there's the other window capture. Oh, if I hide that. There we go. So as you can see, I have things that just sort of tick along in the background, doing doing nothing but filling bars. So I feel as though I know a little bit about the entire genre here. Where's the other window? There it is. The entire genre here of these idle games, and so with Idle Champions, there's an update coming. What, October 11th? Oh, October 11th. So next week, pretty soon. So that's why this is separate from the Baldur's Gate 3. It'll just links at the start because this is actually somewhat time interesting. They're going to basically massively nerf the end game patron rewards. So what this means is that essentially for people who are mid to late game, your rewards are going to be significantly less than they were before the 11. How significantly less? Going from about 65,000 currency or 66,000 to about 10,000. So going from each chest is what, 5k. So going from 5,000 into 66,000, about a lot of chests to two. So as you can see, huge nerf. You're going to have new patron perks. This is fine. The other stuff is fine. This is what's worth talking about because it's what it means is that the way that people are expected to play the game is going to change somewhat massively. So, how is the game? How do I imagine that the game was supposed to be played? The way that you would think based on the type of game. You collect heroes, you form parties, you do adventures, right? It's a hero collector, so you should be encouraged to collect heroes and all of that. The way the patron chests work, let's see, do I have enough currency on one to, yeah. So when you buy a patron chest, the chest, oh, the chest has a chance to have items for every character that qualifies for that patron chest. So what this means is the way the game is intended to be played. You collect heroes, you have a nice big bench, you find the right person for the right challenge, is antithetical to progressing. Because if you have 10 characters who qualify for a patron, that dilutes who can get treasure from here. So the more characters you have, the more likely it is you get items for characters that have niche or narrow uses. So what this means is that this change, before if you were getting dozens and dozens of patron chests, that dilution wasn't as big of a deal, just because as with anything where there's a large number, the more chances you get, the more likely you are to get what you want. But now that you have a chance, now that you get fewer chances, each chance's value is much more important. And so now we're no longer going to be encouraged to build a bench, collect heroes. Instead, you should get as few heroes as possible to ensure that the more value out of the chest. So what this does now is it encourages what I don't think you ever want to encourage in a game like a hero collector, where instead of collecting heroes, you're encouraged to go online and find out, oh, Briv and Human are important. I should get them and neglect as much as I can anyone else. It's just generally a bad idea, and I don't think this is going to help. It's not going to affect new players, right? Because new players were never going to be doing 900 to 1,000 wave patron variants for a good long time. But it's going to affect the people in the mid to early late game who, you know, 90 some epic items from all of those chests would be really helpful. But it wouldn't push them to being able to do too much more because they already were completing some of the most difficult content. So it's more of a win more bonus. But the real issue is that it's changing something that already existed in one of these idle games, which is generally something you avoid if it's not absolutely broken, which maybe the reward curve was, but that's kind of it's baked into the cake at this point. And so being able to get that many chests and get epics on multiple old characters lets you play the game in the way I think most people approach the idea of this game. Well, the people who aren't efficiency scripters, because that's a totally different way of playing the game that is fun for some people, but whatever. So now, I don't know. I don't like this change. I think we should probably. I think it's too late to provide feedback to have this change undone or find a better way to do the rebalance. Maybe we shift the rewards so that they're less weighted at the end and more of the early, like maybe instead of the early rewards giving you half a chest or a chest, they give you 2 to 3 chests, and then the later ones, instead of giving you 9,000 or like 1,000 chests, they give you closer to like 500 or 600 chests, and those other rewards get sprinkled below to the easier stuff. This again helps the earlier players. That may have been better. Of course, you would then have to go in and make sure that you retroactively reward the currency to people who've already completed them, since you can't recomplete old variants. But the point is, there was probably a better way to do this to solve their issue of once you can spearfish one of the 1,000 or 1,100 waves, you're just done. You've got everything you could possibly want. So that'll take us through the idle champions portion, which is just, it's kind of sad because it's a fun thing that you can have at the end, but that gets into one of the other problems that we've just been having with idle champions in general, which is that it's become less and less idle as over the last 5 or 6 months between emergence events and things like the seasonal quest for what's her name, Vi or V, I don't know how that's pronounced, where you had to be kind of babysitting her alt. So I don't know if maybe the game was never supposed to be as idle as they made it or what, but there we have it. Just a general idea of I don't like where it's going, and people play games the way your rules encourage them to do it. And so if this is how they want people to play idle champions, where new players are basically locked into the seasonal heroes and the newly released heroes, and any character that you don't have by the 11th, you'll never realistically gear up. That's not a good basis for a hero collector, which is generally about people playing with characters they like, doing things. And since this is an idle game, doing this and just ignoring it for a few hours. The other thing, I have a few specific gripes about the new Unearthed Arcana for Bastions and Cantrips. I think it's cool. I like that they're bringing back the idea that your heroes can and are sort of expected to establish a base. There's a few things that feel very gamey, like you just get it at level 5. I assume that most good DMs will create a narrative like, oh, level 5 is about when you go from nobody to regional hero. So yeah, that's about when you're gonna get your bastion. There's a few just rule writing that they should clear up, like a bastion turn occurs every 7 days, but you can alter the frequency. But then if you go and you look at all of the different bastion effects, the effects are written happening every 7 days as opposed to bastion turns. I would just go clean that up, change this wording to, leave this here, but then everywhere where we talk about a bastion turns or 7 days, just say, a bastion turn, just to have that cleared up. The other thing, this does suffer from one of the issues that, let's zoom in a bit, that 5e has, and it's right here pretty early on, where instead of writing good, clean rules that might feel a little gamey but are easy to use, Wizards is just like, the DM will figure it out. Just DMs figure life out for your players. That's fine. Most experienced DMs will probably have some sort of ad hoc base system figured out already, because building bases is just a thing players like to do. So what you should do is, if you're going to write a bastion system, it should be written for the new DM who needs help. What sort of magic items should we be approving? Are there some level prereqs for them? Like, well, there's kind of is, like a level prereq of 9 for a rare item. Okay. All of that. I do like that you could keep acquiring magic items as you gain experience, but again, games are generally ending at level 20 if they haven't already. So it's nice that they wrote up all of these wonderful rules that help players know what they should be getting without giving the DM any idea what they should be getting, especially because items within their own rarity bounds are massively different in power scale. You just need to look at what is it like? There's a is it one of the rare musical instruments that gives multiple extra spells per day, flight, and something else, and then what is another rare item like +1 or 2? Like that they're rare, but they're not equal in power at all. So this is just further showing the issues that the magic item system has for DMs. I don't want to go too much into all of the basic facilities, because this is something that you won't really know until you play through it, but I like it, like as a system, but it needs another pass for clarity at the minimum. The other thing that it does is it gives players a lot more power. Well, maybe not a lot more power. The bigger thing is that it gives more power and flexibility, and we're already having a lot of player power creep, which again is fine for experienced DMs, but I don't know new DMs are going to deal with suddenly all of their level 5s and 7s and 9 or 5s and 9s are starting to branch out and do more things than they were originally able to do, especially if you're trying to go back and run an old adventure pre-written that Wizards has sold you, and now this new stuff is going to make it harder. So I'd like it to take a little more step back and look at serving new DMs better than the current rules do. When we get down to the cantrips, I actually think most of the cantrips changes are fine. Just be aware that when they say that Shillelagh improves at higher levels, let's go down to it. It does not improve the same way other cantrips do. It improves not significantly better, really. Well, because 1d6 goes from what, average of 3, 2d6. Yeah, it doesn't scale nearly as well. It's still a buff for a thing that needed a buff, but that's right around maybe around 11, especially as druid. You're not getting extra attacks, and around 11, you're looking for a new base cantrip. which brings us over to the other one that's weird. True Strike is now a radiant melee attack that uses your spellcasting ability, and clerics don't have access to it. So if you wanted to be a melee smiting cleric, that is not an option available to you. Your wizard will do better melee radiant damage than you will for a good long time. And it does scale. It doesn't scale like you would have thought it would. It just adds d6s. So again, from just reading over the Bastions and Cantrips, I like it better than the last one we saw, but I feel like it's still, you can tell that it's still early and they're still working some wrinkles out. So there we go. Some adjacent to D&D and D&D stuff. And that's really it. That's all I've got before I settle in to do some Baldur's Gate 3 later this afternoon. All right, we're done.